Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Julie Mann and I show men and women how they can lead healthy, happy, sustainable lives. And I'm really delighted because today I'm joined by Sophie Thwaites. Hi Sophie.
Hi Julie, nice to see you today.
And you. So for those of you that don't yet know Sophie, she works as an occupational therapist. So before we kind of get into that, I know that you've actually struggled in the past because you were diagnosed with dyspraxia and dyslexia, weren't you?
Yeah, so at a young age, so when I was 16, I was sort of gone through many years already at school, but then it sort of came up, and yeah, I was later diagnosed at 16.
Okay, so for those of you, those people really who are watching, I expect a lot of people have an understanding of dyslexia, but if you can just kind of say what it is, but also dyspraxia, some people might not have heard of that term. So can you explain what they are?
Yes, they come up, I guess, in different forms in different people. For me, my particular challenges around dyspraxia were coordination, handwriting, sitting still, all sort of elements of dyspraxia. But yeah, for me, mainly balance and coordination. So sport was not my friend as a teenager, really. And then dyslexia. I was also diagnosed with dyslexia, and with that comes with challenges around concentrating, focusing, retaining that information. But yeah, it sort of comes up in different forms in different people. But for me, they were my main challenges.
So did this happen from an early age, even though you were diagnosed at 16, Sophie?
Yeah, I think I had it previously. It was just the first school I was at was a very small school, and I was given masses of attention and support with any challenges I had around learning. So I don't think it was really recognised and brought up, because any help and additional support I needed, I was given it. Whereas when I moved to a much larger school, suddenly there were 120 people in my year from only being 15 in my year. So that level of support obviously was massively reduced, and bigger classes. And suddenly it was recognised that actually Sophie's really struggling. When she's not given massive support, she's actually lagging behind a bit and struggling with her peers and struggling to retain that information. So that's when it was flagged up that actually I think she needs to be assessed to see what's going on there. And that's when it came up with saying, yeah, you're dyslexic and you're dyspraxic. And I was kind of like, oh, what?
Wow.
How's that?
Bit of a shock. It must have been such a shock going to that bigger school and then suddenly, being out of your depth. So apart from the physical challenges that you've already spoken about, how did it affect you emotionally? How did it affect your self-esteem?
I think generally, to be honest, moving to that bigger school was a really huge change for me. And just that in its own really knocked my confidence. I suddenly went from being quite a big fish in a small pond to suddenly being a very, very small fish in a very big pond. And yeah, I really started to lose myself. And especially, I think, perhaps the diagnosis as well. I mean, looking back, I can't fully remember what it was like at sort of 16, but I think looking back now, I think having those diagnoses and realizing that actually I was really struggling at school for the first time, actually for a long time, gave me a bit of a hit, really.
Yeah.
Not my confidence.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what was it that you had to learn in order to function in whatever environment you found yourself in?
Yeah, so good question. So I was given the sort of usual support of writing utensils and a laptop to write my ideas down rather than actually pen and paper. I was given extra support by the support staff as well, in terms of reading through things and understanding a piece of writing. But none of it was really helping at all. Perhaps there was a resistance of going, I don't want help. don't send me off and give me extra support. There may well have been an element of that, but I felt like it wasn't getting to the source of what was going on. And then actually there was a lady there. I was really fortunate that someone had recently trained in something around this program around primitive reflexes. and it was a bit new for her. So I was sort of I was assessed as a bit of a guinea pig and deemed suitable to go on the programme because of my background. Basically, they gave my mum and dad a bit of a questionnaire to inquire what my first couple of years were like, and what the pregnancy was like, what the birth was like, what that first year of life was like in terms of development. And because there were a few little challenges around that time, it was deemed suitable that I went on this program. And so I joined on this movement-based program for a year, and it massively helped. And so actually I didn't need all that support that the school was giving, the sort of standard support. And instead I made massive leaps and bounds in my handwriting, in my concentration, in my mobility, just through this specific movement-based program.
Wow. So it sounds like when that happened, you were 17. So tell us about your journey from that time to where you are now.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good journey. Sort of went round and round about, but that really helped for me, that program, so much so that I went from really, to be honest, being quite a shy person and really struggling with friendships and just how I was at school, to really gaining so much confidence that I actually booked a ticket, a return ticket to go travelling in New Zealand for 6 months on my own, which a year prior to that, there's no way I would have ever have considered doing that, because I would have just, the fear would have been crippling. But I did it, and I went away, and then came back, and I worked generally with children for many years, doing various different kind of support, and I did carried out a psychology degree at university, and then later on I trained to be an occupational therapist and did that as a master's. And I worked with young children because I've always really liked working with children. But what I find was really I struggled with was the fact that I always felt like I was helping from a top-down approach. So I was helping giving them wobble cushions to help with their being able to sit still, or I was giving them writing utensils, or giving them overlays to help with their reading. But I just thought, but what's going on underneath all of that? Why are some children struggling so much and other children, it doesn't affect them at all and they're absolutely fine and can blossom at school? And I seem to have completely forgotten at that stage about the program I did when I was 16, until suddenly I started delving into other support, other techniques that can help children. And then I sort of stumbled across it again and thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This still rings a bell. Of course. Why didn't I think of this 5 years ago? But so I did some additional training with the techniques that I did when I was a teenager, and that massively helped me. And they are now the techniques and the methodology that I now use to help children thrive and unlock their potential.
Wow. So are you saying that after you worked on that program, but actually you didn't experience any problems with dyslexia or dyspraxia, or was it a lessened?
It was still, yeah, very much lessened. So I still had challenges around retaining information. I still do, but I have my strategies that I put in place, but it's massively reduced. So my handwriting wasn't such a mess anymore. I could read it occasionally, and my ability to concentrate really improved, so much so that I've actually done 2 degrees, whereas prior to that I think that would have been a real struggle for me. So yes, it's not about these techniques don't sort of take away all the difficulties and you're suddenly a completely different child, but they do reduce them significantly if that child, if their challenges stem from having retained primitive reflexes.
Brilliant. Actually, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but it just depends on whether they are there for a child or not. But if they are there, then the changes can be really dramatic.
Brilliant. One of your testimonials says, Sophie was like an angel who walked through the door and helped my son find his path. She unlocked potential that even we were not aware of. What do you do, Sophie, that makes such an impact?
That's a really nice testimonial. Yeah, I received some just really amazing ones. It's just so, yeah, incredible and heartwarming to receive things like that. But and like I always say, it's really, I'm just guiding the child, but essentially they are doing all the work. So I typically work with children aged between 8 and 12, and we typically work together for about a year, and I see them about every 4 to 6 weeks. So it's actually all on Zoom at the moment. I will start seeing some people in person soon, but at the moment it's still all on Zoom. And essentially all I'm doing is showing them some exercises, adapting them to a degree to suit that particular child, because some children really struggle in positioning themselves in certain in certain exercises, and then they go off and do the exercises every day for about 5 or 10 minutes every day, and then we meet up and review how things are going and give them perhaps new exercises or adapt the exercises. But essentially what we're doing is that we're going right back to that first year of life and mirroring those movements carried out as babies to ensure that all of those connections in the brain are there and they're solidified, rather than perhaps they did a bit of crawling but perhaps not long enough, or perhaps they bottom shuffled instead of crawling, or dragged a leg, or perhaps they were very late in walking or very early in walking. And all of these changes and all of these factors can really play a part in perhaps not strengthening the pathways in the brain. So it's about going right back and going, okay, let's do all of those movements again, ensuring that all of the movements are exactly the way they should have been carried out, which allows everything else to fall into place, allows their mobility to fall into place, allows their learning, their balance, their reading, writing, their concentration, just their how they turn up in the world and how they connect with their environment in terms of sensory needs as well. So yeah, I do that with them for a year, and that's where we see the amazing changes happening.
Wow, how fascinating and brilliant to make that difference. Yeah,
it really is.
So you mentioned that you love children. I know that you have your own family. How do you balance work with family?
Good question. I mean, it's a juggling act, as it is for all families. Yeah, my daughter is Poppy. She's 2.5. So it's a juggling life with my husband as well. And but we managed to do it because this is also the route that I've chosen. I wanted to work on for myself so that I had more freedom and that I could actually really go forward and try and work with and help as many children as I can. And I felt like the way to do that was to do it on my own. So it's a busy life I lead, but I remind myself all the time, I chose this life. this is the path I chose.
Brilliant, and you clearly love it. Obviously, I'm going to put all your links below this video. But for any parents who might be watching and they're a bit concerned about their children, perhaps they're not getting the help they need, or maybe they haven't had been, I don't know whether you call it, diagnosed with a particular condition that you might be able to help them with. Have you got any advice?
Just to know that there's other things out there. And this is why I do a lot of talks, and like one of these, for example, is just because I want people to know that there's other support out there. Because a lot of the time when people get a diagnosis, they get really worried about it, or perhaps some children I see don't have a diagnosis, but the parents just know that there's something going on, but it's not bad enough that the school is really flagging it up. So get in touch if you're questioning about things as well, and because or find someone else that works with retained primitive reflexes, because if that is one of the roots and sources of one of the challenges for your child, then it can really make a massive difference. Yeah, I'm not negating the importance of having diagnosis. I think it can be massively helpful in terms of school and getting that extra support and getting extra time, and you can sometimes get grants for laptops and printers, which can be really, really helpful. But sometimes even with a diagnosis, then the support just sort of stops after you've had that diagnosis, or then you get support for a number of weeks and then it drops off. But try and find someone that actually can really support you long term, and yeah, investigate other areas like primitive reflexes. So yeah, a lot of work I do is just about letting people know that there's something else out there as well. So try it out. And I think that's why I receive testimonials like you've just read out, Julie, because people go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know it was around. And it's a light bulb moment when they do hear about it, and yeah, give it a go, and the changes are amazing.
Great advice, thank you. What would you like people to actually know about you, Sophie Thwaites?
Oh, that's a great question. What do they want to know about me? What would you want to know about me, Julie?
What do you want them to know about you?
I'm really passionate in making a difference in children's lives, and that's ultimately where it comes from. So at the moment, I'm also trying to get some of these exercises into schools. So I'm going to be teaching teachers how to do the exercises to teach the children, because there are so many children that can't access private support, but they really need that support. So how can I do that? So I'm going in another direction to hopefully the schools can teaching the schools the tools to be able to pass on to the children, because then it all has a complete domino effect. So, and the reason why I'm doing that and going into schools is because I just want to help as many children as possible, because I've been there, it's hard. And if you can just make it a little bit easier for someone, then it makes it easier for everyone as well. And it can make a huge difference and a knock-on effect to how they turn up as a teenager, how they grow up and how they are in their 20s and 30s. And it could change the course of a child's life. So yeah, that's where I come from. Wow. Just trying to make a difference.
I absolutely love that, Sophie, and I think that's the way to go, isn't it? Get into schools, fantastic. Yeah. One final question: when you're no longer on this planet,
yeah,
how would you like people to remember you?
I guess I made a difference to a lot of people. And that's where it comes from. I want people to go, oh yeah, she really massively changed our life as a family, a child's life. And I want to remember that I did something to help people.
Wonderful. Sophie Thwaites, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me on.